I think this is about accumulation of a vital asset, a strategic element that is disappearing in nature, that is being accumulated massively in an expansion of uses industrially, and has experienced a renaissance monetarily. I don't think this is just black and white. I think this goes a lot deeper. And for a country to have exhausted the stockpile of silver that is so vitally important in everything from warfare to solar panels and battery and everything in between, this is a lot deeper than that. And I don't think they'll be shedding that silver anytime soon to make a dollar profit.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for February 14th through February 21st, 2023, while supplies last. This week we feature the 4 Nines Fine Nadir Refinery 10-ounce silver bars at just $2.30 over spot per ounce, and 2022 Mint Fresh 1-ounce Canadian silver maples at only $3.45 over spot. Frequently you have to choose between high-volume bars like 1,000-ounce bars to get exceptionally low premiums, or pay a higher premium for more liquidity and increased purity. But these Nadir 10-ounce bars are not only 4 Nines Fine, some of the highest purity available, but also maintain a greater level of liquidity, all at the low premium of just $2.30 over spot per ounce while supplies last. They come individually numbered and are available in any quantity, and come 52 a box. Our second special this week features 2022 silver maples at $3.45 over spot. Silver maples were the first silver sovereign coins to be minted at 4 Nines Fine purity, and remain one of the most in-demand coins today. They come 25 to a tube, 500 to a box, and are available at the lowest premium we've seen in more than a year, at just $3.45 over spot. Both our specials this week are IRA eligible, and if you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us, and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order these specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're always glad to have this returning guest who's a favorite among our viewers. Andy Schectman is the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals. He joins us this Tuesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. That's why my garb is as it is for today. And Andy, thanks for joining us again on Liberty and Finance.
You got me thinking now, maybe I shouldn't have worn black today. Yeah, but happy Valentine's Day to you as well, and to everyone else out there. Thanks for having me again, Dunnigan.
We're reaching you not from our usual location because, once again, my wife and I are on a homestead finding trip, and hopefully it'll be fruitful. We wanted to talk to you about several things besides your usual overall outlook on the current state of the bullion market and the economy and the world's financial plight. We also wanted to address 2 specific viewers' questions that have been submitted. One of them is talking about Ted Butler's assessment that J.P. Morgan has amassed the largest physical hoard of silver in the history of the world, approximately 1 billion ounces, he estimates by his calculations. And the question from the viewer was, people have said that J.P. Morgan stands to benefit greatly from a rising silver market, which appears to be true, and that they may have acquired these through means that you can describe to us. But the question is, with that large of a position, if they were to try to unwind that to take advantage of their nominal gains, wouldn't they cause just a huge depression in the price from unwinding such a large physical position?
Well, the obvious answer to that is, of course. However, if you look at their COMEX holdings, it's somewhere north of 100 million ounces, 150 million ounces. I haven't looked exactly lately. What Ted surmises, and look, Ted is as brilliant of a mind in analyzing the COMEX and the goings-on in the COMEX as anyone I've ever encountered. I read his article religiously and use it to formulate a lot of my own thoughts. His premise, however, is that 90% or 80+% of that silver that they have accumulated has been done so in less than transparent ways, in a very opaque way, whether it be through buying millions and millions and millions of American Eagles and Canadian Maple Leafs in the years that the Mint was making 40 and 50 million ounces a year. And I wondered who the hell is buying all of this silver. Ted's thought was that was entities like JP Morgan buying them, actually melting them down into 1,000-ounce bars and stuffing them away somewhere. Look, JP Morgan paid a $20 million fine for suppressing the metals market. They are very adept at playing the paper game. And if you look at what we see, it's many, many times less than what he says they have. And this is why he goes into great detail and very eloquently as to how they've accumulated it and in what form it is. My true feeling on all of this, Dunnigan, is that if they really wanted to play that game, they would not have gone to such overt lengths to accumulate physical and to do it in a very opaque way, in a clandestine way, because I think what that really speaks to is the ultimate value of the physical commodity. And I think people should take note here that we're all too indoctrinated into believing that paper instruments and derivatives are akin to the real thing. They're not. And if indeed JP Morgan has accumulated such a massive stockpile, which I believe they have, I think it's of greater purpose. Now, some might say JP Morgan actually is doing this as an agent of someone else. Could it be as an agent of the Fed? Could it be that's why, after manipulating the market the way they did, that sent 2 or 3 of their fall guys to prison for doing so, that they only received a $920 million fine, yet that year, that same gold desk that was confirmed manipulating the market was allowed to make $1 billion in profit minus the 920. They walked away $80 million richer. Could it be that's why they're still allowed to be the administrator of the world's largest silver trust, SLV, and many others, 3 or 4 or 5 other ETFs around the world they are involved with? There's a fine line between conspiracy and reality. It's a fair question. If they had 1 billion ounces in their vault on the COMEX, which they don't, I might be more inclined to believe that this is purely a profit play. I don't think that's what it is. I think JP Morgan understands that this is the value proposition of a generation, Dunnigan. I really do believe that. There are very few things, and I try to be objective. If you want to be successful in business, you have to be objective. You cannot be subjective and only believe your own story. You have to, it's like swimming, and you have to pick your head up and see where you're going sometimes. You can't just swim. And I think what I'm getting at here is that I really do believe that JP Morgan understands, as maybe the most sophisticated yet nefarious group of traders on the planet, I do believe they understand that silver, more so than gold even, is the value play of a generation. And it's an asset that is depleting so rapidly in nature, yet so needed in industrial applications, not just its monetary explosion, that this is how they do it. By suppressing the price, by suppressing the narrative, and by accumulating the physical. And God bless people like Bill Murphy, like Chris Powell, like Ted Butler, like all of the people out there, Chris Marcus, yourself, everyone out there who has yelled and screamed about what is happening, all the guests you have on your show about what is happening. Maybe that's the reason, ultimately, because they were getting so much heat at the CFTC that they gave them kind of a weak slap on the wrist. Yeah, $920 million is not weak, but when you realize the desk that was confirmed guilty made an extra $80 million after paying their fine, a company that makes $1 billion a month in profit, that is still allowed to be the administrator of the world's largest silver trust, that maybe that fine line between conspiracy and reality isn't so fine after all. Maybe when you realize that the U.S. government exhausted the strategic stockpile of silver, kind of like Biden is doing with the oil strategic stockpile, again relinquishing more, 25 million barrels or whatever it is, to offset the decrease in what Russia is doing at half a million a day. It's all, I think, possibly a a play by the U.S. to accumulate silver, to replenish their silver stockpile, and maybe they're using J.P. Morgan as an instrument of this, as a tool to help them do this. Could it be that? Yeah, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe they're doing it on behalf of the Chinese government. Why do I say this? Because when Blythe Masters, who ran their desk, was asked about this years ago, she said, the silver's not ours. We're accumulating on behalf of a client. Who is that client? Was she telling the truth? Was she perjuring herself? I don't know. All I can simply say to you is that I think that JP Morgan would have done it in a different manner if it was simply to make profit and then someday shed that profit. They wouldn't go to the great lengths to hide the acquisition of it, to suppress the price enough to pay a massive fine. And I just think that this is bigger than the question that is being asked in a very straightforward manner. This isn't just about making money and then shedding the position and going somewhere else. I think this is about accumulation of a vital asset, a strategic element that is disappearing in nature, that is being accumulated massively in an expansion of uses industrially, and has experienced a renaissance monetarily. I don't think this is just black and white. I think this goes a lot deeper. And for a country to have exhausted the stockpile of silver that is so vitally important in everything from warfare to solar panels and battery and everything in between, this is a lot deeper than that. I don't think they'll be shedding that silver anytime soon to make a dollar profit. When the music stops, all the dollars in the world won't pry out silver from the hands of the people in the East like India, who have accumulated 304 million ounces, 10 times the amount of silver that's backing the COMEX registered category. This is a lot deeper than that, in my opinion.
Another question from a special viewer who is also a financial advisor who is educating his clients on what sound money really is about and what the debt and deficit and fiat currency situation is, about what the Bank of International Settlements has been doing and all this sort of stuff. He sent me a chart this past week, which comes from the St. Louis Fed, which is the FRED website. If people aren't familiar with it, it's an educational charting website for public information available about financial charts in our world, especially related to the Treasury, et cetera. And this is a chart entitled Liabilities and Capital, Earnings and Remittances Due to the U.S. Treasury. And it's a weekly chart, and it shows that for the past 2 years or so, we're going to include a link in the description, guys, but you can't see it. But the right-hand far side of that chart, it drops like a rock. And that's the last 10 years or so, all hovering around one level and then dropping down to 30 billion in the whole, that how much the Fed owes the Treasury because the Fed has become so unprofitable due to these interest rates on their upside down balances and so on that they're carrying. And the question from the viewer came in and saying, what does this mean? And does this have anything to do, will it affect the fragility of our financial system, or is this just simply a bookkeeping? They just keep track and they've got an infinite amount that they can go in the red because we can always just print more to cover it.
Yeah, I think it's a lot deeper than that as well. Look, first of all, rising interest rates here are correcting the mistakes of over 2 decades of brain damaged monetary policy. And the higher borrowing costs that we are seeing are bringing a lot of these absurd price distortions back into orbit. That's what we are beginning to see right now. It's important to understand that the Fed earns income from the bonds it owns and from the services it provides. And after covering their operational expenses, it hands over any extra money to the Treasury. And if you realize that the Fed accumulated a ton of U.S. Treasuries and mortgage-backed securities during their, let's call it their rescue efforts over the last several years, or even go back to 2008 when their balance sheet was $800 billion and now it's almost $9 trillion. They've increased their balance sheet by buying things that were long-term duration assets, like 30-year mortgages at 2.5%, 3%, 4%, and treasuries at super low levels. And now the costs of money are going up, and that makes a big deal, a really big deal. In fact, the high inflation and the super aggressive interest rate hikes has created the largest bond market sell-off in a generation. And these falling bond prices mean massive paper losses for the Fed. But what makes it worse is that you have $2.55 trillion in the overnight repo market that the Fed is currently paying 4.3% on. And you have a 4.65% interest payment that they are paying to the excess reserves to the commercial banks. So what's crazy is that they loaded up on their balance sheet on long-term bonds at super low rates, long-term at the back end of their financial statement at super low rates, yet they now have huge obligations at between 4 and 5% that has created this $31 billion loss in operational losses. And it's growing. And as the higher rates go, the worse this becomes. Look, the Fed right now is kind of like the U.S. government. You could argue they're insolvent. Their balance sheet is $8.5 trillion against capital reserves of, they have $8.5 trillion balance sheet against capital reserves of $35 billion. I mean, they're 200 times leverage. This is ridiculous. So this is a big deal. And I'd like to look at it a different way. Mike Adams talks about Operation Sandman. I'm sure a lot of your listeners will understand what that is. That dovetails with what I talk about with the BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, this moment where the countries dump the dollar. Operation Sandman is something to the extent of 150, 200 countries that bang, drop it all at once the chess pieces are put into place. This de-dollarization to flat out dump dollars will create a massive rate spike. So, there are people out there, and I'm just going to kind of deviate from the way I normally talk. Just think hyperbole for a moment. There are a lot of people out there that think there's a war going on between the white hats and the black hats and the good guys and the bad guys. And the bad guys being the Fed and the banks and the powerful people that own the Fed that have been in control of our system for over 100 years. What if this is a situation where, all at once you see the central banks go back to sound money, the world go back to sound money and blow up the central banks by blowing up their balance sheet to this degree and then letting interest rates go to the moon. Not interest rates that are created by the Fed, but interest rates that are created by the market, where the whole world dumps the fiat system in unison, a la Operation Sandman, a la everything I've been talking about for 3 years, where this group of countries joins together to form a new system, a new currency system. Maybe it's the BRICS currency. Maybe it's something that emanates from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Don't know what it is or how it happens, but maybe the loss of the petrodollar status is the trigger that creates this massive explosion in interest rates that could very, very quickly render the Federal Reserve really insolvent, really in a bad place. Could it be possible that the Federal Reserve actually blows up along with a lot of the Western central banks? We start over. Could that be the Great Reset? We start over with sound money where the good guys are actually behind this? But there are people out there that believe that. And I will argue that there's a very fine line between conspiracy and reality. It's very similar to the theme that I'm talking about. Don't know if it happens or if it doesn't happen, if this is a battle between good and evil. But what I will tell you is that the higher interest rates go, the more strain this is going to put on the Federal Reserve and ultimately on the U.S. government at the same time, because that money that they were taking in, that extra money that was going to the Treasury Department, is now an IOU by the Fed. And there's an old saying, and I'm going to butcher the heck out of it, but something to the extent that if you owe the bank $200,000 and you go broke, you're in big trouble. If you owe the bank $200 million and you go broke, the bank's in big trouble. So just what if this is something that actually is a game changer for all of the Western central banks who have loaded up on debt, who are systemically tied together in an incestuous way, where if one goes, the daisy chain is not going to be pretty of all of these derivatives. And it's one of these deals where you can let your mind wander, but all I can simply tell you is this, is that the Fed's in a bad way right now. And as rates continue to rise, not only does their balance sheet, which is loaded with long-term assets at low interest rates, their obligations on the short-term side continue to move up exponentially. It's a recipe for disaster, especially if we get that Operation Sandman moment, or that moment where I've talked about where all the countries say, hey, thanks, or OPEC in particular, and Saudi Arabia, thanks for moving away from the dollar. Just like Saudi Arabia said a week ago or 2 weeks ago at the meeting where they came in Davos and said, hey, we're open to taking other currencies for oil. Is it getting closer to that moment? Don't know. But if it happens and we see a massive spike in dollars, it could be very, very, very bad news for the Federal Reserve.
We've certainly heard a lot of news recently, for example, coming out of the World Economic Forum, a meeting that just happened in Switzerland, and others talking about our futures being planned for us by high-powered, wealthy elite. And then you talk about actions being taken by the BRICS Plus alliance that could be potentially in opposition to the Western Hemisphere financial powers that have kind of ruled the roost for the past 300-400 years. So it's a coming clash of titans, perhaps. People don't know, but it always seems like it gets back to what George Carlin said about it's a big club and you're not in it, as far as ordinary people trying to take the ordinary actions they can in their ordinary lives to prepare themselves to weather this clash of futures that are being planned for us from this side or from that side. And that's where another place where you come in, besides alerting us to these big forces and these big trends, you also tend to give us actionable resources that people can acquire to help protect their families' financial futures and sort of take shelter from the coming storm. What do you have available this week for a weekly special?
We're going to stick with the silver theme. I truly do believe in my soul that silver is the most undervalued asset on the planet. And I think it is immeasurably important. To your first question from your viewer, it's immeasurably important to the powers that be, to the very, very elite who are going to great lengths to accumulate it and to make us all believe that there's nothing to see here by suppressed pricing. In fact, and I don't mean to digress, if you looked at today's example of right before the Fed announcement at the PM fix in London, they smashed the heck out of the price of silver and it came right back up. This is exactly what they've done for a very long time. Dimitri Speck, a brilliant chartist, has shown us this for many, many years, where at the PM fix, they smashed the heck out of it. This is the type of manipulation that the world is sick of, the Western manipulation of the markets. And the London Metals Exchange and the COMEX at the front of that suppression and hypocrisy. So look, the only way to beat them is to do what companies like JP Morgan or the country of India are doing. Use the suppression to your favor and accumulate the crap out of it the way that they are doing. And the price suppression is a subsidy. It's aggravating. It's tiring. It's exhausting. I get it. You can only say so much about it from my chair. I still believe in it in my soul that it is the place to be before the music stops, because their actions, whether it be the actions of the CFTC or the inaction, whether it be the action of a bank like JP Morgan or a country like India, or the drawdown of supply from the LME and the COMEX, are betraying the price. Either you believe it or you don't. The more you dig into it, the more you see what's happening, it becomes, in my opinion, almost irrefutable. Yet the counterintuitive price action is maddening. With that being said, that counterintuitive price action has created an environment in this industry that I haven't seen in over 3 years. Is it the beginning of a trend? I think not. I think it is a sweet spot. Anyways, we have Nadir 4.9 fine 10-ounce bars at $2.30 over the price of silver. That's as cheap as I've sold them for since 2019. Not even close. And then we have the 2022 silver maple leafs at $3.45 over the price of silver. Here again, that's $5 cheaper than they were per ounce just a few months ago. These are in stock. They're ready for immediate delivery. It's the best value that we've seen in silver in a very long time. Could they continue to go lower? Yeah, I think they could. Could they continue to meander at these price levels? Sure, they could. Could they slingshot higher at some announcement or an event? Absolutely. In the end, I think how it happens won't matter, but the mathematics, the economics, and the movements by the biggest money in the world are telling me that inevitably it will. You have to have strong fingertips and hang on, Dunnigan. And if you're looking for a value in silver, if you're looking to get into silver, it's the best price, the best premium, the best availability we've seen in over 3 years in a world that just seems to be spinning out of control. A world where governments just appear to almost be preparing for war, and at the very least, central banks are de-dollarizing. And in a world where people in this country have lost confidence in our leadership and don't trust our government, and have you wondered where the heck our president is over the last several days with all that's been going on? We need a leader. And I think at this point right now, this just fits into my belief structure that if you don't just take a step back and trust your gut and not look at the prices, not listen to the rhetoric, but look at what the biggest money in the world is doing, like JP Morgan, you'll come out ahead when the music stops, and you won't just survive. Maybe you'll even thrive.
You reminded me of the experience I had when my wife and I were back in this location back in September, weathering Hurricane Ian as it came through, and having gone to a store to do some last minute accumulation of some supplies that we needed or might need during the storm, since we're away from our usual home where we have all our stuff. I noticed how accustomed the people there were to preparations for incoming events of force majeure type magnitude, and how they were going about accumulating all the things they needed and doing it in a very civil way. And I remember telling you at the time that if the price had been whatever on the water that I was buying, or whatever, drinking water, that sort of thing, that would not have been the deciding factor for me. It would have been, do we need this? Do we have it already? And if we don't, do we need it? And is it available? I'll take it. So anyway, that was interesting eye opener for me, experiencing that, viscerally in the right before the coming storm. So a lot of people are trying to prepare themselves for a coming storm. We want to make sure that they've at least done their due diligence and battened down the hatches for their family's future. I heard one client this week who was referred by another from the past, and who said she wants to make a generational change for her family's future, to better her family's future. And I thought that's such a good way to summarize what it means to take meaningful action with the empowerment that we do have as individuals to take action at the personal level, the household level, the family level, for the legacy of our families surviving and thriving going forward. So Andy, as always, just thank you on behalf of all of our viewers for being here with us every Tuesday for the weekly market update. Any final thoughts you have before we wrap?
No, I think, look, my only final thoughts would be, it just seems like something very strange and serious seems to be taking place. And I don't know. I think that it's very important right now for people to take a step back from the narrative, and it's time to trust your gut. In a world where $5 billion for border security is too expensive, but $100 billion to the Ukraine isn't, where $410 million towards border security for Jordan, Lebanon, and Egypt in the $1.75 trillion omnibus bill is okay, but protecting our own borders and our own people is not. And in a world where the military is shooting down unidentified objects over U.S. airspace after letting one travel all the way across the country, is happening, and our leadership is nowhere to be seen. These are really weird, strange times. And I think you have to, in unconventional times, you have to think unconventionally. And I think that's what we have to do right now. I just want people to understand that in my soul and in my heart, I believe everything that I am saying, and I am there with you in seeing the frustration and the counterintuitive nature of this market is enough to test everyone's patience. But I'll simply say this one more time. I've said it ad nauseum. When a country like India imports 304 million ounces in 1 year, when the biggest exchanges in the world are being bled down, when all of the countries around the world that almost encapsulate 90% of human population are forming a union, when all of these things are happening outside the dollar, outside the US, when our country lacks leadership, it's time to protect yourself, be your own bank, your own retirement, your own annuity, your own insurance policy. And I'm very grateful and thankful not only to be a part of what you're doing, but to be a part of helping people prepare for that. And, it's frustrating, yes, but in the end, I think we will all be glad that we hung on to logic, the logic of what's happening right in front of us. Even if the numbers don't bear it out, the reality, the logic of it, the mathematics ultimately will, even if they're able to suppress it right now when we think it shouldn't be. It's just one of these deals where you got to hang on tighter, trust your gut, hang on, have strong fingertips, because I really do believe we are getting very close to that crossroads. And you can see it with things spinning and spinning and spinning. One of the things we didn't talk about today, which I'll save for next week, are over a dozen new developments with the BRICS nations. So by the time we talk next week, maybe it will dominate everything we talk about, with probably 24 things, more unions being made, more deals being made, all of it sidestepping the SWIFT system and the dollar. And it's happening so fast, and again, that when we started talking about this, it was one every few months. Now it's several a day. And I think that's what I would leave people with. Price is the greatest tool of misdirection, and the rest of the world is de-dollarizing, if not preparing for war. And hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but I still think it's very important. You need to protect your family, and I can't think of a better way of doing it than with what we're talking about.
Well, Andy, as always, thanks for joining us on Liberty and Finance, and we'll be back here with you again next Tuesday for another weekly market update. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Make sure you subscribe. If you don't want to miss a single episode, go to libertyandfinance.com, put in your name, your email address, and click submit. Make sure you confirm on the confirming email, then you're in. You'll get one email per day in your inbox with our latest interview and any specials. Andy, thanks for joining us.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.